He got a job working in a nut house, dressed in white, and he would come home from the asylum every night.
The internet is burning with claims that Hollywood legend Robert Duvall has died at 95, leaving behind a secret deathbed list of 6 evil golden age actors he despised. It sounds explosive, it sounds viral, but here is the twist. He is still alive. And the truth is bigger than the rumor. Over decades, Duvall has openly criticized the ego and power games that poisoned classic Hollywood. So, who were the 6 men who betrayed the craft? And which American hero once threatened to punch him for acting too well? The Code of the Consigliere. So, if there was no literal deathbed confession, what exactly was Robert Duvall really calling out? It wasn't a mobster. It wasn't some shadowy studio boss. It was the biggest cowboy in history. But before we get to that clash, you need to understand something deeper. Duvall never played the Hollywood game the way others did. While actors chased fame, magazine covers, and box office numbers, he chased something much harder to sell. He chased the truth. In a film industry built on the star system, where image often mattered more than craft, Duvall stood quietly in the corner like a man studying a chessboard. He trained in the method. He believed in discipline. He believed in disappearing into a role. And over time, he became what many call the anti-star. He did not crave the spotlight. He respected the work. Now, here is where it gets interesting. When Duvall has spoken critically about old Hollywood, he has not described evil as some dramatic villain behavior. To him, the real corruption was ego. It was when actors stopped serving the story and started serving themselves. It was when the camera became a mirror instead of a window into human pain. Let me ask you this. If you had to choose between a movie star who looks good on a poster or an actor who makes you feel something raw and uncomfortable, who would you buy a ticket for? Are you drawn to glamour or are you drawn to truth? That question sits at the heart of this entire Hollywood Golden Age debate. On sets like The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, and later True Grit, Duvall often played the calm observer. Think about his role as Tom Hagen in The Godfather. He was not the loudest man in the room. He was the consigliere. He listened. He calculated. He watched everyone else lose control. In many ways, that was Duvall in real life too. Imagine Tom Hagen sitting in the corner of a chaotic movie set, quietly judging tantrums, diva behavior, and actors rewriting scenes to protect their image. That was Robert Duvall for more than 60 years in Hollywood. Not shouting, not fighting, just remembering who respected the craft and who betrayed it. According to interviews discussed in film circles, Duvall has openly criticized the obsession with stardom that infected parts of classic Hollywood. He believed that once ego takes over, art suffers. And when art suffers, audiences lose. So what happens when a disciplined method actor runs into the biggest symbol of old-school Hollywood swagger? What happens when the method meets the Duke? The bully, John Wayne, and the fistfight? When that kind of disciplined, quiet consigliere energy walks onto a classic Western set, it does not always get a warm welcome. Because in 1969, on True Grit, Robert Duvall was not just stepping into a movie, he was stepping into a system. The Hollywood Golden Age had its own rules, and one man stood as the living symbol of the old guard, John Wayne. Big screen presence, bigger cultural gravity, and a reputation for doing things the way he'd always done them. Here's the thing. When method meets the Duke, you almost get a fistfight. According to accounts about the production, Duvall got into it with director Henry Hathaway. Not a playful debate, not creative differences in a polite little memo, but an argument sharp enough that it stopped being private. And that is where Wayne stepped in. The story goes that Wayne warned Duvall that if he kept arguing with Hathaway, he would punch him. Not, let's talk later, not calm down, a physical threat, right there in the air of the set. And suddenly, the tension wasn't about a scene anymore. It was about power. Now ask yourself this. Would you have had the guts to talk back to John Wayne in 1969, or would you have just taken the paycheck and stayed quiet? Because that's the pressure cooker Duvall walked into. You are a younger actor, surrounded by legends, and one of the biggest names in American film is basically telling you, fall in line. This is where the evil shifts from rumor into something real you can actually understand. To Duvall, the danger wasn't some secret Hollywood cult or backroom plot. It was intimidation dressed up as tradition. It was the idea that the loudest voice gets to be right, and that, to him, kills the craft. you can feel the clash in philosophies. Wayne came from an era where you show up, hit your mark, say the line, and let the machine work. Duvall came up believing you earn the moment before you perform it. You prepare. You search for emotional reality. You don't just play a man, you become believable enough that the audience forgets you are acting. So why would a Golden Age icon feel threatened by a guy who actually prepared? Was Wayne protecting the director, or protecting the old hierarchy that kept stars on top and actors in their place? Because that's what this moment exposes. Not just a temper, but a system that policed anyone who didn't worship it. And if you're thinking, okay, but did this actually matter? It did, because these set dynamics shape performances, careers, and reputations. One threat tells every person on that crew who is allowed to push back and who is expected to stay silent. Wayne's threat was physical, loud, and simple. But the next man on this list didn't need fists. He worked differently. He wore respect like a mask, then used the industry itself as a weapon. And according to Duvall, this next figure became something far worse than a bully. Because after True Grit, Duvall would name another kind of menace, the one that tortures you psychologically. So who did Duvall call the actor's enemy? The enemy? Stanley Kubrick. Wayne's threat was loud and physical, the kind of old-school dominance you can feel in your chest. But the next name, connected to Duvall's harshest words, didn't need fists at all. This one used time, control, and perfection like a weapon. And in Duvall's world, that was even worse. Because when Robert Duvall talked about Stanley Kubrick, he did not speak like a fan. He spoke like someone who saw a danger sign and refused to walk past it. Years after True Grit, Duvall sat in a Hollywood roundtable conversation and said something that landed like a slap across the room. He called Kubrick an actor's enemy. Not difficult, not demanding, enemy. And here's why that matters. Kubrick was famous for chasing perfection, and Hollywood loves to treat that like a cute quirk, like it's just part of genius. But Duvall's point was darker. He believed Kubrick's method did not sharpen the actor. It wore the actor down until the human parts started to disappear. He even pointed to films like The Shining and A Clockwork Orange as examples of what he meant, saying he looked at Kubrick's movies and felt the performances were terrible. That's a brutal thing to say about a director many people call the greatest of all time, and Duvall did not whisper it. He said it plainly, like he was describing bad weather. Now, pause for a second and really picture this. You are an actor on a Kubrick set. The lights are hot, the crew is exhausted, the camera keeps rolling, and then you hear it again. One more take, and that one more turns into 50, then 90, then 100. So let me ask you, and be honest, do you think 100 takes makes a movie perfect, or does it just kill the soul of the actor? Because that's the argument here. Some people hear 100 takes and think discipline. Duvall heard it and thought tyranny. And the wild part is, Duvall did not even have to work with Kubrick to judge him. He basically looked at what happened to actors in Kubrick's orbit, especially the stories that followed The Shining, and he decided, not me. In Duvall's mind, there's a line between pushing for greatness and treating people like props. Kubrick, to him, crossed it. Here's the darkly funny way to translate Duvall's insult. He basically said Kubrick's actors looked like robots who needed a software update. Ouch. But underneath the joke is a serious question. If a director breaks you to get a performance, is that art, or is that abuse dressed up as brilliance? And if the final film is a masterpiece, does that erase the cost? This is why Duvall's evil is not about crime or scandal. It's about craft. It's about whether the actor is allowed to stay human while creating something unforgettable. Wayne tried to control him with intimidation. Kubrick, in Duvall's view, controlled people with obsession. And now we move to the next turn of the knife, because Kubrick was a tyrant in the workplace. But the next name connected to this story hit Duvall somewhere more personal. Not fear, not exhaustion, heartbreak. Because what happens when the betrayal comes from inside the family? Who was the godfather figure that, in Duvall's world, broke the code? The fallen idol, Marlon Brando. Brando cost the production sanity, but the next name didn't just drain time or energy, it drained respect. And for Robert Duvall, that might be the hardest kind of loss to admit out loud, because yes, it was Marlon Brando, the man Duvall admired, even loved as an artist, but couldn't fully respect by the end. Here's the uncomfortable truth about Hollywood's tragic genius era. Talent can become a shield. The the bigger the legend, the more people tiptoe around basic standards. And Brando, especially in the later years, became the perfect example of that. Not because he stopped being gifted, but because he started acting like the gift meant he didn't have to do the work the same way everyone else did. On Apocalypse Now, the stories behind the scenes turned into their own mythology. Brando showed up heavier than expected and unprepared for what the production needed, and the film had to adjust around him. That's not fun chaos. That's the machine bending itself around one person. And it's exactly the kind of thing that makes a disciplined actor like Duvall go quiet in the worst way. The way you go quiet when you're disappointed, not angry. Now ask yourself this: if you are the director, or the crew, or the other actors, do you call out the legend, or do you swallow it because it's Marlon Brando? Because that's how the Golden Age power works. The bigger the name, the smaller everyone else is expected to become. And then there's the detail that makes this story feel almost unreal. Brando had a reputation for using cue cards instead of memorizing lines, and Duvall has spoken about how that kind of approach was part of Brando's process. Sometimes it was treated like a quirky genius trick, sometimes it looked like contempt for the job. Is it still acting if you are reading your lines off a post-it note? Or is it something else? Something closer to winging it while everyone else carries the weight? Picture what that does to a scene partner. You come in ready. You've built the emotional reality. You're trying to make the moment feel alive, and your co-star's eyes keep drifting, not to you, not to the truth of the moment, but to words placed somewhere off camera. It's hard to stay emotionally present when you feel like you're performing next to a shortcut, and that's the core of why Brando becomes a fallen idol in this story. Duvall wasn't calling him evil like a cartoon villain. He saw him as a warning label, a cautionary tale, the kind that says genius without discipline turns into genius without respect. So let's go there. At what point does a genius become a joke? When the preparation disappears, when the set has to rebuild itself around one ego, when the craft becomes optional. Duvall's disappointment hits harder than anger because it tells you what he valued most. He didn't worship fame, he worshipped the work. And watching Brando treat that work like it was beneath him felt like a betrayal of the very thing that made Brando legendary in the first place. But if Brando cost productions their sanity, the next actor in this story cost Duvall something even more concrete: money. Power, a piece of the family he thought was solid, because the next betrayal didn't happen in the jungle, it happened in the business, where loyalty gets priced like a product. So who broke the Corleone Brotherhood and cost Duvall millions? The sellout, Al Pacino. Brando's chaos cost time and sanity, but the next blow hit where Hollywood hurts most, the paycheck, and the name attached to that fracture was Al Pacino. Because when The Godfather Part 3 came together, Robert Duvall expected the family to feel like a family, not just on screen, but in how the studio valued the people who built the legend. And that's where the math turned ugly. Reports around the production say Pacino was offered about $5 million, while Duvall was offered about $1 million to return as Tom Hagen. Now, let's be clear about the weapon of choice here. It wasn't a gun. It wasn't a threat. It was the quiet message hidden inside a contract: you matter less. And for Duvall, that wasn't just business. That was an insult to the brotherhood the story depends on. Think about it. Tom Hagen is not a random side character. He's the consigliere, the brain in the corner, the man who keeps Michael from turning into pure madness. If Tom is treated like a discounted extra, then the whole mythology starts to wobble. Because if the film tells you Hagen is essential, but the studio treats him as optional, what are we really watching? A family saga? Or a cash machine wearing a tux? Here's the part most people miss. This wasn't Duvall refusing work because he needed more money to survive. It was Duvall refusing a symbol. He later explained that paying Pacino more was fine, but not several times more. And that right there is the emotional core. Duvall didn't want a throne. He wanted respect that matched the role and the legacy. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really picture it like it's your own job. If your brother got paid 5 times more than you for the same project, would you still show up smiling? Would you tell yourself it's just business? Or would it feel like betrayal with paperwork? And here's the Hollywood twist. When Duvall walked away, the script had to change. The movie explained Tom Hagen as already gone, and the story reshaped itself around that missing pillar. Which means one contract dispute didn't just change a paycheck, it changed the narrative. So yeah, if we're talking about evil in Duvall's world, this is what it looks like. Not horns, not crimes, just a system that can turn loyalty into a line item. But money is only one kind of poison. The next one is vanity, the kind that makes legends hide behind a new face like it's armor, and Duvall had words for that too. So which two modern icons did he mock for wearing masks? The Masquerade, De Niro and Nicholson. After what happened with Tom Hagen and that broken brotherhood, the story widens, because Duvall's real war was never only with one co-star, it was with a whole style of celebrity acting that turns craft into costume. And yes, this is where two modern giants enter the room, not as villains in a courtroom, but as mirrors that show what Duvall feared the industry was becoming. Think about Robert De Niro and Jack Nicholson. Two legends, two towering careers, two different kinds of spotlight. De Niro is famous for the transformation people can point at, the weight changes, the new walk, the new voice, the loud proof you can screenshot and say, "See, that's acting." Nicholson is famous for the opposite, that electric grin, that familiar rhythm, that feeling like Jack is always in the scene, even when the character has a different name. Now here's the question Duvall's code forces on us. Do we want performances that disappear into life, or performances that sell us a headline? And be honest, which one gets you to hit replay, the whisper or the stunt? Because Duvall's idea of greatness was invisible. He believed the work happens in the quiet places, in the listening, in the pause that makes a line feel like it was just born. So when Hollywood starts rewarding "look at me" acting, it can feel like a masquerade. The mask gets praised more than the soul underneath it. Have you ever watched a movie and felt the actor working harder than the character? And when you feel that, does it pull you closer or push you out? Here's the uncomfortable part. The industry loves a spectacle because spectacle sells. It sells magazine covers, awards campaigns, viral clips, and dinner table arguments. But Duvall's whole career was built on being the opposite of viral. He played men who felt real enough to scare you a little, because you could meet them at a gas station. And now, with Duvall gone at 95, the question hits harder. Was he just an old actor complaining? Or was he warning us that the golden age didn't die from lack of talent, but from too much performance of the self? So when you hear this list, don't just ask who he judged, ask what he was protecting. And in the final verdict, we have to decide, bitter or brutally honest for us. Robert Duvall didn't just outlive his rivals, he outlasted their egos. That's the last lesson, a code of authenticity in a town addicted to masks. Do you think method acting went too far, or did it save cinema? And when does transforming become showing off? Drop your take in the comments down below today. If you want more Hollywood Golden Age truths, behind-the-scenes receipts, and Godfather-era stories, smash like, subscribe, and meet us in the next video.